What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here of the Desai Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts, Tom Desai, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Desai Guys, Mr. Tad Desai. And Tad, we are close to the divisional round when it comes to the playoffs. We're moving right along here. It's going to be an exciting 4 games. We got the 2 on Saturday. We got the 2 on Sunday. I'm super stoked for it.
I wouldn't say all 4 are going to be exciting. It's half and half. It's half and half.
Sure.
So,
okay.
But you know what? Who knows? This is the beauty of the NFL playoffs is, especially, we're going to get into this later, but one of my predictions, I'm not expecting a close game, and the entire time writing notes, I'm like, this is going to be a close game. I'm like, God damn it. So we'll see, but I hope I'm wrong, but I really only predict 2 good games out of this.
Yeah, we will see exactly how it all plays out. But I mean, obviously, you get a game like the Los Angeles Chargers versus Jacksonville Jaguars, and it's like you think it's going to be a blowout, then all of a sudden they come back in the second half.
You and I both called that one very wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So you never know what's going to happen in the NFL. That's why you have to play the games. It's not just what's on paper. So we will see how it all plays out this weekend and who will be moving on to their respective championship games in each conference. Like, I mean, we're almost there. The Super Bowl is almost here.
Would you say they play to win the game?
Yeah, safe to say that. Safe to say that. And
the Jags are who we thought they were.
And, obviously, you want to play to win, and your best way to sort of play to win is to partner with our partners at Bet Online, because, I mean, the playoffs are going on right now. You got the NBA in midseason form here coming up on the All-Star break. Pretty soon, Tad, we're going to have pitchers and catchers for MLB. So, I mean, it's like Bet Online remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at Bet Online. And as your continued source for all sports wagering information, Bet Online features live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest, easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports and events, whether that's the NFL, the NBA, MLB, NHL, MMA, esports, tennis, boxing, golf. They got you covered on all fronts. If you want to bet on it, I bet you our friends at Bet Online got you covered there. So head to Bet Online today on your computer or mobile device and join, and you can receive a 50% of a welcome bonus on top of your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE. That's capital BLEAV. And like I said, you can receive a 50% of a welcome bonus on top of your first deposit. Once again, our promo code is BELIEVE, capital BLEAV, and you can receive your rewards. Bet Online, where the game starts. So, Tad, we got 2 great topics that we're going to get into. One, we already sort of teased a little bit. We're going to be doing our predictions for the NFL divisional round. That's going to come in the back half of the episode, but we're going to start with some fantasy-related topic, I should say specifically, of let's sort of look forward to 2023. And we both wanted to sort of highlight some players that, we're possibly going to be targeting in 2023 fantasy league drafts.
Never too early to look ahead.
And players that we're looking to avoid just because based on what we saw in 2022, potential target share or, carry share or whatever it is, that could be a issue going into 2023. Obviously, with free agency playing a picture, the NFL draft could play a picture, but just guys that we sort of like and don't like as we sort of head into the 2023 fantasy draft season. I mean, we still got a long way to go until that season, but it doesn't hurt to sort of give a quick look as far as players that you may want to keep on your radar as far as guys to grab and guys that you may want to let other people in your league grab there. So, Tad, let's start with guys, and Cap is very interested in this.
Cap is I'm all in on this.
He's ready for his 2023 fantasy prep for sure. So definitely let's get into this here, Tad. So I want to hear who is a guy that you're targeting in 2023 drafts? had a little bit of a sleeper year in 2022. They came on strong at the end or something. It's just like, guys, it's like, he can have a solid year in 2023.
Well, first things first, speaking of pitchers and catchers reporting, one of the hardest things to do about this segment was I kept looking up 2023 outlook, like fantasy outlook, or 2023, like promising young players and stuff. And all I got was baseball. I don't care about your Stremekes or whatever the hell his name is. I don't care about how this random ass catcher is going to do. I'm talking about football here. And it was very hard to find, which shows how early it is. So this does not count as any predictions or anything else. We're just having some fun with it. Look, I mean, I rode hard for a particular Steelers player all offseason by the name of Kenny Pickett. And surprisingly, he is not my pick for this. It is the guy he's throwing to is George Pickens. I think this is a prime definition of a sleeper going in next year because George Pickens, let's be real, he's not going to be at the top of anyone's. I'd be surprised if he broke anyone's top 10 receivers, but I do think he has that potential to get there. So let's talk about why. I think the more familiar he gets with Kenny Pickett, and this part is really important, the more familiar Kenny Pickett gets with taking those first team snaps. Kenny Pickett lost a lot of offseason experience because it was Trubisky taking most, if not all, of the. I still remember that being a story. Oh, Kenny Pickett hasn't taken a first team snap, and it's week 3 of the preseason. How good is he really? Well, that's over now. Pickett is now the unquestioned starter. So I think he's going to get a lot of value from that. So Pickett's going to get better, hopefully. And that will increase the chemistry. That's already looking good. I'll get into that in a bit. But going back to Pickens, he saw 5 or more targets in 3 of his last 4 games of the season, including 2 touchdowns in that span. So I'm not going to say he was like incredible, like mind-blowing, but he did end the season on a pretty good note. And look, I know it's not, I don't know, statistical or anything like this, but it's just the eyeball test. You could just see that chemistry between Pickett and between Pickens start to grow, that you just could kind of tell they had that type of relationship where they just understood each other's play. So again, with Pickett having the entire offseason with Pickens, I really think people are underestimating how valuable, that's going to be. On top of that, again, with the eyeball test, Pickens is just an athlete, dude. Like some of the catches this guy made this year were insane. And it really does. God, do I do this guy? Fuck it. I'm going to do it again. It reminds, don't shake your head. Oh, don't shake your head yet. You're about to shake your head even harder. Hold on.
Yeah, let's hear it.
It reminds me of a young Odell Beckham Jr. I'm telling you, I will stick by that, man. You can just see the roots there of, a true athlete that once he, starts training in the NFL and gets used to it and builds up, like it's just, I really do believe that George Pickens will be the next, I'm not going to say great NFL receiver. And honestly, you can make an argument that OBJ was not a great NFL receiver. How about that for a hot take? But oh man, I was hoping for a stronger reaction from you. For our listening audience, you just gave me kind of like a meh response. But you know what? I'll take it.
I could go either way on that one. But yeah, we'll save that for another time.
All right. But it's just one of those things where like I think that Pickens has all this potential to develop. Now the real question is, will he take advantage of that potential in the second year? That's a risk right there. So I think if you're sitting in the 6th to 8th rounds, he will probably be there. And that is a great risk to take. And obviously I only make the comparison of like in terms of draft value. He reminds me a lot of Josh Jacobs. The risk is there, absolutely, but the reward is there as well. And I did call Josh Jacobs being a sleeper last year, and look how that turned out. So I really think that George Pickens is a great risk to take in the mid rounds. Now, I will say the one bad thing about this is that somehow Matt Canada is still their offensive coordinator. I don't know why. I would love to know what pictures he has of Mike Tomlin because they must be doozies. But, it's not a huge concern because he clearly proved he can still produce that offense. And here's the really nice thing. They still have Deontay Johnson. So you don't have that worry about like, oh, this is an up-and-coming receiver. We're going to focus on him. I think that's what happened to Drake London. And I know the whole Calvin Ridley thing happened as well. But people realize Drake London's legit, so they focused on him. So you don't have that whole focus problem because if you focus all on Pickens, Deontay Johnson's going to light you up. So they have to spread the field so you kind of avoid that worry as well. So honestly, I need to kind of do a little bit more research, and we'll probably touch on this in the offseason. But George Pickens might have my pick for my favorite sleeper of the year going into next season.
He's not a bad pick because, I mean, you clearly saw it in both of their rookie years, both Pickett and Pickens. And it's like usually
Well,
when
not
you see
according to
this in
Alfred Rowe with Pickett.
but usually you see this in training camp where it's like, you see the second string and third string quarterbacks, they sort of rely on the second and third string receivers then. So it's like going into training camp, you're already used to that chemistry. So it's like once you actually get game action, then it's like, who are you looking for? The guys that you've already built timing and trust and chemistry with during training camp and practices during the week. So it's like automatically you can see why Pickett was looking Pickens' way. And so, yeah, definitely with Pickett being the starter now heading into 2023 and beyond, Pickens is definitely going to increase his target share in that offense. Because, I mean, yeah, Deontay Johnson is great. But, yeah, if you see this chemistry already, it's probably going to build further and just going to have another great 1-2 punch in Pittsburgh that just – it always baffles me that Pittsburgh has these great receivers because we've always talked about this. The AFC North is built on good running and good defense. And so it's just like, where are these great receivers all of a sudden coming from? I know we're shifting into more of a pass first league. So that's why you see Cincinnati with their great receivers in Chase and Higgins and Boyd. And it's like Steelers have always had it. Baltimore's not gotten on the picture there as far as what they haven't been.
We'll get into Baltimore. Trust me.
But Cleveland's doing pretty good. They got Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones is really great. I got a little bit of optimism with David Bell, but yeah, overall, just jump back to the point. I like Pickens in 2023 too.
Well, speaking of jumping back, is it Pickens?
Pickens.
Yeah. You said Pickens is.
Well, I think I was referring it to like their chemistry with Pickett, so that's why I was like that apostrophe at the end, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't make it Pickens is.
Pickens is. Right?
That's how it is. It's just Pickens. If the apostrophe goes at the end of the S, it's still just Pickens, just with the apostrophe.
I don't know. I like to emphasize it so then people know.
Okay. So Pickens, but you are correct. Pickens' targets are going to be absolutely phenomenal next year, in my opinion.
Yeah. So let's shift to the quarterback position here. And I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence, quarterback with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm pretty sure he's going to be on a lot of people's radar as far as like being one of those sleeper quarterbacks that can possibly do really well for you because God, Ted, it's crazy what good coaching can do because clearly we saw in his rookie year that
or is it crazier what bad coaching can do?
It's both. You can look at either side of the coin, whatever you want to look at, but it's just like it's crazy just what happened in a matter of just 1 year what they qualified. Well, I mean, Urban Meyer's qualified too, but I mean, let's not jump down that. Let's not jump down that rabbit hole.
Okay, no, you're right.
Doug Peterson totally came in, revitalized the culture, definitely got the most out of Trevor Lawrence. He finished the season as the 7th best fantasy quarterback in standard PPR leagues, finishing with 295.62 points. Honestly, he was kind of up and down all season. There's a lot of times where you saw him do really well. Then there's times where he's sort of like, not looking as good. You're wondering of like, okay, is it still going to require another year before we could fully unlock the, number 1 overall pick, Trevor Lawrence, that a lot of people were expecting. But honestly, Tad, he totally started to come on towards the back half of the season because he had a 7-week span between weeks 10 and week 16, where Lawrence was ranked as the 4th best fantasy quarterback.
I tried so hard to trade for him. I tried so hard to get him on my roster.
Yeah, and I mean, he was just absolutely dicing up defenses. He was taking what was given to him. He was really playing into the offense. I mean, Travis Etienne started to emerge at that point. Evan Ingram started to emerge at that point. So just the offense overall just really got on the same page, and they really started to get clicking. And that's when this team took a turn. And obviously, they ended up winning the division. So, I mean, that's really just what, like I said, it's crazy just what good coaching can do. That's not a tall order,
though. That's not a tall order. Let's not act like that's an impressive feat.
No, that's true. Tennessee did slide a little bit, but it's still impressive what Jacksonville could do, right? So
yes, that's fair. That's fair.
Now you need to shift.
I'm shitting on a team that just pulled a 27-point comeback. Like I have no room to talk, and I'm wearing a Patriots shirt. So what the hell do I?
Anyway. So let's shift things to 2023 here because it's like you have most of that offense coming back, but now add in Calvin Ridley into that offense. Like, I mean, that's just the match made in heaven for Trevor Lawrence. Like, I mean, you got a guy who's a former 1,000-yard receiver. Like, I mean, he's just so dynamic with his routes. He can catch pretty much anything that comes his way. So it's like you add that guy to Christian Kirk in the offense. They have Zay Jones, who was sensational all season long. Evan Ingram's going to be very interesting. I'll get into Evan Ingram a little bit later in the episode here, but just he's been really great this entire season. The offensive line protected. Travis Etienne TM. They can use him in both facets as far as rushing as well as receiving. So, I mean, it's like all of that really translates into Trevor Lawrence potentially finishing in the top 5. And the biggest thing as to why I'm targeting him, Tad, is that he will be drafted outside the top 5 for the position in 2023 draft.
Oh, 100%. No, he
so
100%
it's like,
will.
that's great value. Like,
Aaron Rodgers, assuming Aaron Rodgers doesn't retire, he will probably go higher than Trevor Lawrence, which is ridiculous.
It's possible. I mean, Rodgers didn't have the greatest season in 2022, which we obviously predicted as well that he was going to have a down year.
Mm-hmm.
But just there's still a lot of quarterbacks. There's a lot of people that are going to think Russell Wilson's going to bounce back. Obviously, you got your Mahomes, you got your Josh Allen, you got your Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, depending where he signs, he could be higher. Jalen Hurts will go higher. Kyler Murray possibly. So there's a lot of quarterbacks that are going to go higher
Murray
than
over
Lawrence.
You're insane.
So I'm just saying that it's just like he's not going to be in the top 5 at the position. So if you can get him later in your draft and build out the rest of your roster, oh man, you could totally reap the rewards of Trevor Lawrence finishing in the top 5, but you're getting him in the middle to later rounds. So I mean, it's like that's why I'm totally targeting Trevor Lawrence in 2023.
Well, I'm so glad you brought the Calvin Ridley point because nothing against Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk, I don't remember if it was on the show. I think it was off the show. We were talking about this. Dude lived up to his contract. Everyone was making fun of it, but I mean, man, everyone, including us, we were making fun of the contract, or at least I was. But he lived.
We both were.
Okay, thank you for the support. But that is exactly what the Jaguars' offense was missing. What's our deep threat? What's a guy we can absolutely bomb it to? They got that for pennies on the dollar because the NFL is so stupid. But okay, whatever. I'm not going to get into my whole rant about that. You know, they're stupid. It wasn't his own games, and it's betting. Who the hell cares? Anyway, my entire point is this is now, like you said, one of the most complete offenses in the league. If the Jaguars were smart, they would go the route that the Cincinnati Bengals went about last offseason, where it's like, okay, we got our receivers, we got our tight end, we got our quarterback, we got our running backs. We need to invest everything into our offensive line now. Like, I don't care, and I haven't done any research on this. I don't know who any of the free agent offensive linemen are off the top of my head. But on the Jaguars, it's the Futurama meme. Take all my money. Like, shut up and take my money.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, just go for that because, yes, this offense has – and I hate this segment so much because they are going to smash the Colts next year again. And it's one of those things I just have to accept because they are very quickly building up to become a very good, I won't say super team, but a very good contender in the playoffs going forward. And I'll tell you who really hates this is Titans because the Titans are in the, like, they were so close, but they're not quite there. And I think the Titans are kind of hitting this like downward spiral a little bit. So
they're going down the hill and the Jaguars are climbing up. That's exactly what's happening right
now. So no, I think I'm right there with you. And especially what you said about draft strategy, let everybody else overdraft on quarterbacks. Cause I mean, what'd you say? He was 7th quarterback?
He finished as the 7th best fantasy quarterback. Correct.
I'd be shocked if he didn't finish higher next year, to be totally honest.
That's what I said. I think he's going to finish in the top 5. And he could draft it outside the top 5 at the position. So I think that's where the value is. So let's keep these rolling here, Tad. Let's go with the next position here. Who's another guy that you're targeting?
I'm targeting Tony Pollard.
No.
I'm just kidding. It's Tony Pollard. Because he is so good now. He is so good. He is so good. It's actually funny because I almost blew that joke by pronouncing it correctly, which would have been hilarious. But he is so good now that I finally learned how to pronounce his name correctly on the first try. Yet he is not so good that the Cowboys are still not giving him the starting job. It is super confusing. I was a Tony Pollard guy. See, I even struggled right there. I was a Tony Pollard guy. I had him on my roster this season. It was the most frustrating thing, though. I honestly felt bad for the guy because usually when you have a frustrating player on your roster, it's the player's fault. This is one of the rare cases where it's not the player's fault. It's because Mike McCarthy is a fucking moron. It drives me nuts. And this is the one thing me and Cowboys fans have agreed on, I think, my entire life. Is like, since I almost went back and found the specific week, but really who cares, is about the halfway through the season, everyone here in Dallas was like, why are we not starting Pollard? And that talk never died down. It died down a little bit after Thanksgiving when Zeke had that like 2 or 3 touchdown performance. But even then, people were still like, okay, that was goal line. Like, look, Dallas fans are smarter than people give them credit for. They realize that this offense is just more dynamic with Pollard. He's a better pass catcher than Zeke. So my entire point with this is the Zeke thing has to end eventually. He's very clearly hitting the back end of his career, which is very sad. We've already talked about this on the podcast about, the mishandling of Zeke's career, but it's got to happen eventually. It's just a matter of time. And he's not Tom Brady. It's not like, oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Like, you can see those physical signs happening. So I think that next year it will finally happen where Zeke just drops off the cliff enough where Mike McCarthy goes, yeah, okay, we need to start Pollard. So I think that here's the interesting thing about Pollard as well. He finished even while splitting time, and that's a hard thing to quantify. I tried, trust me. I spent about an hour tonight trying to quantify what splitting time meant. That's a rabbit hole you do not want to go down. But because you got the receptions and the running yards, and there are a whole lot of factors there. But bottom line is, I think that if Pollard can finish as the 7th ranked, notice how the 7th ranked players are coming in a lot here, as a 7th ranked running back while splitting time with Zeke Elliott, imagine what he can do as a starter. And also, Amir, here's another interesting point. My entire talking point so far has been assuming the Cowboys keep him. Yeah. Pollard is set to be a free agent. Now, there's some rumors that he's going to be franchise tag. I'm not entirely sure if they're going to do that. It wouldn't shock me either way. I'm very interested to see how the Cowboys navigate this, because I think what they're going to try to do is try to offer him a long-term contract a little bit more on the cheap than he'll get in the open market. So it's basically like, how much do you like Dallas? So if he goes back to Dallas, I still like his fantasy value. If he goes somewhere else, it obviously depends on the team, but I don't think he would go to a team where it's the same thing where he's splitting carries. I think he'd go to a team where he's the true unquestioned number one. How about this, Rodtek? If that happens, he immediately skyrockets into late first round talk, in my opinion.
Oh, easily.
Oh, God damn it. You were just spraying water all over my hot takes here.
100% late first round, possibly early second round, like depending on how your draft plays out, because I know a lot of people are starting to target receivers early in the first round too, and possibly with the season that Travis Kelce had, he's probably going to be going in the first round too as well. So it's like he may slip into the second round, but definitely he's an RB1 now as far as if he signs with 100%. Another team. Like that's 100%.
Now,
no question.
Speaking, and we don't need to spend too much time on this, but speaking of a team that while I was writing notes, I'm like, who would be a fun team that needs a running back that he could do really well with? What if Pollard becomes a Dolphin?
That would be interesting. But they got 2 running backs there that played the system really well.
He's better than both of them.
No, that's fair too. That's fair.
And I'm glad you brought up the system, because that's what made me think of it, was like he fits that system literally. Like that is a dream matchup for both parties.
And I'm not saying he doesn't fit the system, but I'm just saying I don't know if they'd paid that much money.
Like why pay up? Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. It's just fun to speculate. This is why I love the offseason.
For sure. I'm gonna get into my pick here, and that's TJ Hawkinson, tight end with the Minnesota Vikings. So he actually finished as the number 2 fantasy tight end.
Sorry to interrupt you real quick, but I was so angry when you sent me your picks, because I was like, why did I think of that? I was like, damn it. Because me and my friends were talking about this last weekend.
Time to take your picks, and so I did.
Because me and my friends were talking about that this weekend. It's like, he's been so hot with the Vikings. But anyway, carry on with your pick.
Yeah, so I mean, he finished as the number 2 fantasy tight end in standard PPR formats. Honestly, since he was acquired by Minnesota, he averaged 9.4 targets per game and 55.9 receiving yards per game. Like with Detroit, though, in his first 8 games or so, he averaged 6.1 targets per game and 56.4 receiving yards per game. So you're like, there's not so much of a discrepancy between the receiving yards. But the big thing with Detroit, though, as to why those numbers are skewed a little bit, is he had an amazing game against the Seattle Seahawks, where he went on for 12 targets, 8 receptions, 179 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. So it's like, you got to take his time with Detroit with a little bit of salt. Whereas like once he got acquired by Minnesota, I mean, honestly, they were using him any way and every way that they could. Like, I mean, clearly Justin Jefferson was the star of that passing offense, but TJ Hawkinson was definitely a close second behind him. Like, there's a reason they acquired him. They wanted to involve him in the offense, and they're definitely going and looking his way every single chance that they could when Justin Jefferson was obviously locked up. So, I mean, you look at this offense too that Kevin O'Connell ran. They were 7th in total points scored, 7th in total yards gained. So I mean, it's like clearly this offense is clicking too. So most of these pieces are going to be coming back next season. So you can automatically expect that Hawkinson now with the full season with the team, obviously with the full season of practice too. I mean, he's just going to be involved that much more, and it's like easily that you can see that. The tight end is always a tough position to draft for, but with these sort of predictions here, we could sort of see that Hawkinson is involved in this offense. He's going to have a good year. And here's the kicker on this one. 2023 is a contract year for TJ Hawkinson. So depending on what happens with the contract situation, apparently they're trying to enter early discussion talks with Justin Jefferson. So if they prioritize Jefferson over Hawkinson, Hawkinson may play on the final year of his contract. So he may decide to ball out and either sign a new deal with Minnesota in the offseason then in 2024 or move on to another team and just totally cash in there. So 2023 is going to be a big year for Hawkinson. And like I said, the tight end position is always hard to draft for, but I think Hawkinson is slowly going to become a sure bet, just like your Travis Kelce's, your Mark Andrews, your George Kittles now. You can throw Hawkinson into that picture too.
I'm so glad you brought that up because there are a few things I love more than a player going into a contract prove-it year. Like that is just fantasy money right there. It's because they're going to play the hardest they have in their career to lock up that, that final, in a lot of cases, that final big contract opportunity. So, I love that. I didn't even know that he is heading into his contract year. So that's amazing. Man, that was a great trade by the Vikings. Yeah. And you're right. They trust him so much that throw to him on 4th and 8, thinking he can get 8 yards. But, sorry, Kirk Cousins. I know. I'm sure that wound is still fresh. I don't mean to rub salt in that wound. But no, I like I said, I love this pick. I can't believe I didn't think of him. And I think the biggest thing you said is he's so hard. If you've been following the podcast throughout the season, I hate tight ends and fantasy football so much. They are the most annoying thing in the game. So yeah, I think Hawkinson is one of those great guys that honestly could slip as well. I think a lot of people are slipping on him. Maybe as we get closer to the season, a lot of the sleeper talk will kind of pick up and that'll up his value.
For sure.
Possibly, I could definitely see that happening. But for now, if that doesn't happen and his stock stays, and I put this in quotes, low, oh, that would be a steal. Oh, dude, imagine if you had a draft where you got Hawkinson and Trevor Lawrence. Woo!
Yeah. That'd be pretty insane. So obviously those are guys that we want to target, but let's really quickly go through guys that we're sort of avoiding in 2023 drafts. Like these are guys that we just don't want any part of as of right now when we're drafting our roster. So Tad, who's a guy that you are not targeting in 2023 drafts?
You people call me a crazy man. You people laughed at me. You said, Tad, what are you talking about? You don't understand quarterbacks. I told you people to stay away from Lamar Jackson. I told you to, and none of you listened to me. I was right. He finished out because my hot take in the preseason was he will not be a top 10 quarterback. And everyone was like, Ted, how can you say that with all the rushing touchdowns? Blah, 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 blah. Well, it turns out I was goddamn right because he finished as quarterback number 14 in fantasy football. Okay. Now here's the surprising thing. Up until later in the season, it wasn't injuries that derailed. I will admit that's where I was wrong because I called it. I thought he was going to get hurt in like week 5 or 6 or whatever. And it was just going to be kind of, scattered throughout. Like, oh, he's questionable here. He's questionable there. To his credit, he played through the first 12 games fairly consistently. I believe he missed one game in that span. But this is what's more concerning is the fact that it was actually him not being a top level passer that limits his potential as a fantasy option. So, Amir, let me read this out for you. Lamar Jackson played in 11 games. And now people are going to be like, he played in 12 games. He threw 5 passes against Denver before he got hurt. Okay, we're going to ignore that. So 11 games. Do you want to guess how many games he scored over 20 points in that span?
Probably say 3 times.
Oh, you're close, actually. 4.
4. Okay.
So 4 out of 11. That's how many. And this is a quarterback we're talking about. And a running quarterback on top of that. So a running quarterback actually has a shorter leash on that, in my opinion, of like, dude, you are more likely to give me 6 compared to 4 points in standard leagues. So what are you doing? Giving me less than 20 points in over half your games. And look, I'm not going to entirely blame Lamar Jackson. He barely had anything to work with in Baltimore. His best receiver, arguably, is Rashad Bateman. And of course, it's very hard to succeed with that. But the point remains that we've seen Tom Brady, we've seen Peyton Manning, and yes, I'm listing off these like all-time quarterbacks, but guess what? If you were drafting this guy to be a first-round quarterback, like a lot of people were, you got to be as good as those guys. That's my bar for quarterbacks. So I don't trust Lamar Jackson. Now, a lot of people are going, well, what, you're assuming he stays in Baltimore. I could give a shit if he goes to New York. The dude's not consistent enough in terms of health to be a dependable quarterback. So I think in terms of injury, I think in terms of passing, I think I like him as a backup quarterback. I like him as a quarterback too, to keep on your bench. But honestly, I think that is his fantasy ceiling moving forward.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting what happens with the contract situation and whether he stays in Baltimore, who are now changing their offensive coordinator. So that's going to play a wrinkle into things. Whether he signs with the new team, that's going to be a lot interesting as well. So yeah, Lamar Jackson's status as far as a top 10 fantasy quarterback, it could be in jeopardy, but we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. So honestly,
Sorry,
Tad, we were sort of talking about
the Ravens just texted me, so I need to text them back. They are not happy.
Sure. I'm gonna get into I was lauding Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars earlier, but you brought up this name and we were sort of wrong as far as the contract, but honestly, his fantasy production kind of worries me in 2023, and that's Christian Kirk of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So honestly, he started the season red hot. In his first 3 games, he totaled 62.7 fantasy points per game and was ranked as the 6th best fantasy wide receiver at that time. And it's like, nobody expected this because obviously, just like me and Tad, a lot of people were like, you gave how much money to Christian Kirk and you're expecting him to be your wide receiver 1? And it was proving it. But then here is where the problem happened. The next 5 weeks, he failed to cross 15 or more fantasy points 4 times out of those 5 weeks. So, I mean, that's just saying that he started really good, but then people started to understand that's like, okay, maybe he can actually do stuff in this offense. They started to prevent it from doing much. So, I mean, this is pretty much how the rest of the season went as well, too. Like, it was very up and down, right? He looked good for a couple weeks, then he looked bad for a couple weeks, then he looked good for a couple weeks, then he looked bad for a couple weeks. So it's just, unfortunately, it's hard to rely on that as far as the fantasy production is concerned then to keep him in your starting roster. You don't know which Christian Kirk you're going to get. So related to that, we already brought this up before, but Calvin Ridley is going to be entering this offense.
That's why I stuck up the 2 fingers for a listening audience. I stuck up 2 fingers when you said there was one issue. I thought you were going to say Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, exactly. So even if Calvin Ridley starts out the season kind of slow because he's getting back into NFL action, he's going to start out the gates a little slow. That's still not enough to warrant me targeting Christian Kirk because even with that short span, Calvin Ridley's eventually going to get back into the rhythm. He's going to be a focal point of this offense. So he's eventually going to take off. And as soon as he does, Christian Kirk's stock severely drops. Now, one wrinkle that I will counteract that with, surprisingly, is that Evan Ingram. Now, I said I was going to bring this up a little bit later. This is the time now. Evan Ingram is a free agent. He was signed to a 1-year deal, and he had an amazing season this past season.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's the big thing, whether the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to prioritize Evan Ingram and actually bring him back because he was such a good receiver in that offense for Trevor Lawrence, or if Evan Ingram's going to use this and be like, hey, I balled out. I'm going to go into the offseason. I'm going to totally get paid by another team and price his way out of Jacksonville. Because if he does that and prices himself out, Christian Kirk's stock then does increase because now it's Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk, and it's a little bit limited as far as the passing options. Still a lot of great options for Trevor Lawrence, but it's a little bit limited because now you're losing Evan Ingram. If Evan Ingram does come back, that's where Christian Kirk takes a hit then, because I think it's going to be a little bit more Evan Ingram, Calvin Ridley. Christian Kirk will then just be the number 2, number 3 option that he was just back in Arizona. So it's like, you may see some flashes. You may have some good games here and there. If you play in a deeper league where you have more expanded rosters, he could be a good threat. But yeah, unfortunately, the entrance of Calvin Ridley into this offense is great for Jaguars fans, but it's going to be frustrating for fantasy football managers because now you don't know what to do with the other pieces in that passing offense. So yeah, Christian Kirk, as great as the season that he had, I'm not touching him.
Evan, I hear that the weather in Indianapolis is lovely this time of year. You should check it out.
Hey, they got Jelani Woods. Jelani Woods.
Your boy Jelani Woods.
Man, Jelani Woods. So.
But no, the only thing I'll say on this, and I'm not comparing the talent level, I am comparing the roles, though. You know what the whole Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley duo reminds me of? this is Chris Godwin, Mike Evans all over again. You got one really good possession receiver with one good speedster. How does that split work out? And like you said, it's going to be a very inconsistent, like 1 week one's going to go off, the other week the other's going to go off. So if you're willing to take that risk, sure. But it's one of those things where, yeah, you just got to kind of like they're both draftable, but you got to draft them with the, knowledge that maybe let them sit on the bench the first couple of weeks and see how this plays out before you kind of start talking about where to put them in the starting rotation.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in Jacksonville, where both those receivers possibly add more in the offseason. They obviously spent a lot last offseason. Maybe they're going to spend more this offseason.
I need to look up how much
in the draft, obviously, too, right? So let's get into one more guy, Tad. Who's another guy that you're avoiding in 2023 drafts?
A guy I just brought up, Chris Godwin. I mean, like I can't trust this guy for shit.
Yeah.
Like and here's the worst part. It's nothing against him. I honestly think he may be the most underrated receiver in the league. And I know people know he's good, but I think people are really underestimating how good this guy is. And here's the unfortunate part for him. It doesn't matter if Tom Brady comes back or not. He is screwed either way. Because if Tom Brady comes back, we all saw in the playoff game, Tom Brady, and I'm going to do the thing, is now a shell of his former self. Is he better than half the quarterbacks out there? Probably, but he's still not good. And so, okay, let's assume Brady comes back to his MVP self. Like we said, it was always consistent of like who he liked from week to week to week. And kind of the point you brought up as well. Some weeks Gronk would go off. Some weeks Cameron Brate would go off. Other weeks it'd be Mike Evans, and it'd be Chris Godwin's. And, who knows? Next year it'll be fucking Russell Gage. Like, no one knows. So I don't like Godwin. On top of that, I think a lot of people are missing with this Bucs team when it comes to fantasy. They fired Byron Leftwich, which was a really stupid firing, in my opinion. Am I agree or disagree? Bad firing?
100% agree.
Okay. I feel like that's a general consensus. Just had to make sure. Yeah. So they're bringing someone new, at least as of recording. We don't know who yet. And so that's another thing. We don't know how this new offense is going to look. Are they going to utilize Godwin well? Are they going to focus on Mike Evans? It's just, there are so many question marks surrounding here. And let's assume Tom Brady leaves. Whoever they bring in is probably going to be a bridge quarterback because their draft pick is too good to get a good quarterback unless Anthony Richardson or someone takes a massive tumble, like an Aaron Rodgers-like tumble, but that doesn't really happen anymore. Have you noticed that? Like, there hasn't been really like a dramatic quarterback tumble in the last couple of years because they're really just so valued.
It really depends because the draft is such a crazy situation too.
It's a crapshoot. Exactly. Yeah. So you can't depend on that. So they'll probably bring in a Teddy Bridgewater or something like that. And that kills his value even more because who the hell trusts a quarterback like that throwing to him? So it's just way too many question marks, way too inconsistent. Honestly, it's like speaking of the draft, it's like a draft player with a health condition. Put him off your board. I'm not even going to touch Chris Godwin.
Yeah. No, you gave me this pick, and I was actually thinking about Chris Godwin too, because exactly like you laid out. We don't know about Tom Brady. If Tom Brady comes back, we don't know about the offensive coordinator. So even that connection is going to be weird. And, missing either of those pieces is just going to be an adjustment. And so, yeah, I'm not trusting Chris Godwin, unfortunately, in 2023 as well. So I'm going to get to the last pick here. Rashad Penny, running back with the Seattle Seahawks. So
this is a great pick.
So honestly, like Penny looked good towards the end of that 2021 season. That's the reason why so many people were targeting him in 2022 NFL fantasy drafts here. But then the biggest thing with Rashad Penny is just he can't stay on the field. I mean, Tad, he has missed 12 or more games in 2 of the past 3 seasons. Like, I mean, this guy just can't stay on the field. And if you extrapolate that to the 5 seasons that he's been in the NFL, he has missed half of his games.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. And then the biggest thing as to why I'm not trusting Rashad Penny this coming year, Kenneth Walker III. I mean, the guy just had such an amazing season that it's like, how can you not go with this guy in the future now? I mean, he has started only 11 games last season, and he rushed for over 1,000 yards in those 11 games. Like, I mean, the guy is just such a dynamic running back. He's going to be the lead back. So even if Rashad Penny gets some touches in that backfield, it's just going to be relegated to a change of pace role. But here's where things could get a little bit interesting, Tad. Rashad Penny is a free agent this coming offseason. So if he goes back to Seattle, like I said, he's just going to be a change of pace running back in Seattle. But if he goes to another team, I'm wondering if he's going to get some sort of low prove-it deal to be part of a rotation with the team, and he could have a little bit of value. But overall, for me, because of that injury history, I just don't trust him at all to be a part of my fantasy roster. It's just like, I don't see it. Like, I mean, we saw that sort of glimpse of it, but it's just like, I'm holding out too much hope to capture that 2021 Rashad Penny at the end of the season. And it's just like, I'm not going to invest everything that I can. Like, I mean, maybe as a late round pick, but it's like, there are better picks out there, especially with the incoming rookies and the offseason changes. So yeah, Rashad Penny, you're done to me in fantasy leagues.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure our people watching this video and our listening audience are going to be like, what the hell is Tad doing? Because as soon as you said that, I was like running through the list of all the teams in my head of like who needs a running back. The only team that could sign him where I could really see like some real fantasy potential there, because I got through about half the divisions before you kicked it to me. The Bears, if they lose David Montgomery and he goes to the Bears, I could see some potential there. But overall, like I can't see any team signing him for anything other than a complimentary role. So, exactly. I mean, again, going back to the Chris Godwin thing with Rashad Penny, I'm just throwing off my board. He'll be an interesting waiver wire watch that he'll probably make a guest appearance on that episode when we do that in September. But oh my God, I'm going to be 29 when we do that episode. But, it's just one of those things where, yeah, I think he's an excellent waiver watcher. But yeah, like you said, it's one of those things. And even if he goes back to Seattle, it's just like the timeshare is just going to eat into his value. It's not even worth looking at, in my opinion.
Yeah. And honestly, I use this Rashad Penny, like, player that I'm avoiding as sort of an extension of players that I'm targeting. Kenneth Walker the third. I mean, that guy's just going to be so good in Seattle.
No. You've been riding for him for a while.
I have.
This was that was a good dude to ride with. You pick Kenneth Walker, I pick Kenny Pickett. I feel better about your Kenny.
Yeah, no, 100%. So that's sort of the fantasy portion of today's episode. Like we talked about in the intro, we're going to get to our divisional round preview picks and predictions, very similar to what we did last weekend where we previewed the Super Wild Card weekend. But yeah, now we're getting through 4 games here. So we got the Saturday slate. They're going to start it off with the Jacksonville Jaguars, the number 4 seed, traveling to Kansas City to play the Kansas City Chiefs, the number 1 seed. That's going to be a 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, and that is going to be on NBC, surprisingly. So that's going to be the NBC game. So, yeah, current spread in that game is 9 points, courtesy of our friends at Bet Online, in favor of Kansas City. Tad, this was your game to sort of predict. Like, give us your quick analysis as far as how you think it's all going to play out.
Look, guys, I swear to God, I'm not being biased because they are the Jaguars, and I do hate them. I really do. But you put out your biases and then say that they don't matter, and they really don't. Because I love that. Oh man, I'm gonna make a lot of LAFB people mad. That comeback was awesome. I got a real kick out of that. And I already told you, if you want to hear the story of why I got a kick out of that, go to last week's episode, listen to that because I broke it down there. But let's be real. You are not coming back 27 points against the Chiefs. That's not happening because the Chargers offense, that's where everything went wrong. I don't know why did they fire their DC too, or was it just OC?
Just the offensive coordinator has been fired.
Okay, correct. Good. Honestly, good. Because I'm glad the defense didn't get the blame. They deserve a little bit of the blame, obviously, but you can't score a single point in the second half. Like, come on. With Justin Herbert and Austin Eckler, like, come on. So it's one of those things where it's not going to happen against the Chiefs. And I especially became confident in this after I found this stat. Are you ready? The Chiefs on the season are minus 11 in the first half in point differential. Do you want to guess what they are in the second half?
Probably some ridiculous amount in the plus column, I'm assuming.
Plus 65. And point differential in the second half.
It's pretty crazy.
If I have more time, I will look up like historically where that ranks. Sure. But they are that is the very definition of a second half team. The problem is if you're a minus 11 in the first half means that you have put up some pretty big deficits against yourself. If you do that against the Chiefs, it's not going to happen because, like I said, the Chargers' offense is incompetent. The Chiefs' offense hasn't looked incompetent in about, 3 or 4 years now? Or 6 years. Mahomes has been playing for 6 years now. They've never looked incompetent with Mahomes. When was the last time you were like, wow, this Chiefs' offense just can't get going? Honestly, when? Because I was trying to think when I was putting my notes together. When was the last time you said that about the Chiefs?
Probably the 2020 Super Bowl when they played the Buccaneers.
Okay, no, that's actually fair. No, because I said the same thing. Okay, but that's and obviously it was the world's biggest stage, so it kind of worsened it. But even okay, that's one game in the last 6 years that you can remember.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Right. So it's just not going to happen. Sorry, guys. I will say this, and to somewhat defend the Jaguars, and I just took about 5 years off my life just saying that sentence, but I don't think it's going to be a complete blowout. I don't. So my ultimate prediction is something around, I don't know, 31-17, 38-20, something like that. The Jaguars are going to kind of hang in there a little bit. But this is the important thing. Notice those two score predictions. Both of them are more than 9. So I actually like, and you guys know me, especially if you've been listening to the podcast all season, I usually stay away from spreads this big. I like Kansas City -9 at -110 odds. Again, given by our partners at Bet Online. So -110, I kind of like it. Sorry, Bet Online. I'm kind of telling them how to steal money from you, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to play out very similar. I think that Jaguars are going to play it close early on. The Chiefs are going to struggle a little bit.
Exactly.
With a little bit of that 1 week, they always say rest versus rust. So I think we may see a little bit of rust early on, but then, the Chiefs are just going to get into a groove and they're just going to be able to do whatever they want on offense. And because of that, the defense is going to be rested. They're going to prevent Jacksonville from doing anything that they want to do on offense. So I think I got a final score prediction here of the Chiefs 34, Jaguars 20. I think there's going to be.
Okay, so we're on the same page there.
Yeah, so I think the Chiefs are going to be able to roll this, especially in the second half. Yeah, exactly. So I got that there. Second game on Saturday. This should be pretty fun. I think we got the New York Giants, the number 6 seed, playing the other number 1 seed, the Philadelphia Eagles.
You think this is going to be a good game?
I think it'd be interesting because what do I always say about divisional games? It could go either direction.
No,
There's just another divisional game here. So that's going to be at 5:15 Pacific time, 8:15 Eastern time. That is going to be on Fox. And current spread in this game is 7.5 points in favor of Philadelphia. Look, the Giants were able to move on because, Minnesota can't play defense to save their life. That's pretty much the main reason as to why they couldn't win that game. But also the big thing is that the Giants defense, they prevented Justin Jefferson from doing anything against them. Like, they totally bottlenecked him, prevented him from doing any sort of damage against their defense. And that ultimately stopped the rhythm and flow of this Minnesota offense. Because, we talked about this earlier, that they that offense flows through Justin Jefferson. Excuse me. So,
we're having a lot of trouble with grammar in this episode.
The past tense of flow and flew, and I was just like, what sounds better? So I was like, yeah, I don't know. But clearly this offense goes through Justin Jefferson for Minnesota. And the fact that he couldn't get going, I think that obviously affected the offense. Like, Dalvin Cook got shut down too. So, it's like the running game on top of that was just not as effective. Now, TJ Hawkinson had a great game, but I think by default, he got involved because Justin Jefferson got locked up. Adam Thielen, I think, scored a touchdown in that game, if I remember correctly. So it's like all these other guys were getting involved a little bit, but overall, like, this Minnesota offense was sort of struggling because they couldn't get their main playmaker going. And so this is going to be tough for Philadelphia because Philadelphia's coming off the bye. They are way better on both sides of the ball. Like I said, Minnesota's bad on defense, but Philadelphia's good on defense. They have 2 dynamic receivers where it's like you only had to lock up one with Minnesota. You have to worry about both A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert is healthy now too, so it's like that's going to be a lot to worry about. Obviously, Jalen Hurts, that could be a little bit of a question mark. He's still dealing with the shoulder injury. So, but he gritted through it the last time he played the Giants, and they won pretty convincingly in that final regular season game for the Eagles to clinch that number 1 seed. So I think it could be an issue, but you also had to just look at the history from this past season. In 2 regular season games between the Giants and the Eagles outscored the Giants 70-38. So, clearly the Giants just can't score on this Eagles defense, and you give them a week off. That's just going to help the Eagles just sort of be a little bit more comfortable. Game plan for either team. In this case, obviously the Giants. You face them 3 times in a row, and I know the old adage, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. But I think in this case, Philadelphia should be able to control this game on both sides of the ball, prevent the Giants from doing anything that they did in the previous weekend against the Minnesota Vikings, and it's going to be a pretty decisive win. I got a little bit lower scoring. I think the Giants are going to be a little bit closer at the beginning, the defenses, and like I said, very similar to Kansas City. There may be a little bit rust with Philadelphia early on, but I still got Eagles winning by 10 points here. I got the final score of the Eagles 27, the Giants 17. And the prop that I have in this game is obviously A.J. Brown's going to have a good game, but like I said, they have 2 dynamic receivers. So I got Devontae Smith to have 1+ touchdown in this game.
I like that one. That's a good pick.
Plus
That's
177.
I really, really like that bet.
So Devontae Smith to score and Philadelphia to win at plus 177. But your quick thoughts on Giants and Eagles?
27-10. I think like
Okay,
you're,
kind of close.
I think you're right. It's going to be a little, it's a touchdown difference from your prediction, but I think it's going to be one of those things where I completely agree with you where they play it close in the beginning. And it's kind of like when Alabama plays, I'm trying to think like Vanderbilt or something really close in the first half. And it's like Alabama 21, Vanderbilt 10. And you're like, oh, could this be it?
Upset
And then all of a sudden
City.
Alabama scores like 30 points in the second half.
Yeah,
We're like,
exactly.
oh no, all right, never mind. And
Completely
I think
blown
that's
out.
going to be kind of the case in this game of like the first half is going to be closer than a lot of people think. And you're going to have all the analysis of like, could the Giants do this? This is what the Giants need to do to pull it off. And then it's going to be like, oh no, this is the better team in Philadelphia. So it's nothing against the Giants. I think they're a really fun team to watch. We talked about this the last episode we recorded. You and I both called that upset, so they made us look great. So thank you, New York. But unfortunately, I just think they need to do a little bit more roster building. But hey, they are a team to look out for next year.
100%. And our good friend on LAFB Network, Kerry Grongard, he even said too that like this is ahead of where a lot of people think the Giants should be.
A lot of people. I feel like everybody.
Yeah, pretty much everybody, but just like Brian Dable is a great coach. I think he's got a lot of good things that are going to happen with this team going forward. And exactly like you said, I think they just need to fill out just a couple more pieces on both sides of the ball, and I think they could be very competitive in the NFC East going forward for sure. So I like the Giants going forward as well. But in this game, fortunately, they're going to be going back home to start planning for that offseason. That Philadelphia will move on. So let's get to the Sunday slate here. We got Cincinnati, the number 3 seed. That's the early game against the Buffalo Bills, the number 2 seed. That's going to be happening at 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, and that will be on CBS. Current spread in this game is a little bit closer than the other 2 games. This is 5.5 points in favor of Buffalo. So, I mean, Tad, you got this game here. So what do you think about Cincinnati and Buffalo?
This is the game of the week, in my opinion. This is the one I'm the most excited for. I think this is going to be a shootout. I cannot wait for it. And here's why I'm really excited. So if you guys would like to see my own and Amer's playoff predictions, go to our Instagram and our Twitter handles, which are listed below, and you will find the brackets that we put together. And I got a little bit of surprise from some certain people because they were like, really? Yeah, the Bengals winning it all? And like, people are really sleeping on this Bengals.
I was one of them.
Good,
I texted you and I was like, really? The Bengals? And
then, I'm telling you, man, I know coming off that Ravens game, but like you said, to help your point, those division games, man, they can be crazy. So I'm not panicking over that. I'm truly not. I'm not just saying this for the podcast. I'm truly not panicking over that Ravens game, especially because here's why. The Buffalo Bills, I don't think are receiving enough criticism. Actually, not enough people are talking. They walked into this season as like these with this reputation, these unbeatable juggernauts. Tony Romo accidentally called them the champions. Did you see that?
I don't remember that one, but yeah.
I kid you not. Look this up. Tony Romo called them the champions, and then like 5 minutes later in the broadcast, he had to be like, "I know they haven't actually won a championship." Yeah. It's like, what? So why are you calling them the champion? It's whatever.
Champions of the AFC East, I guess. Like, I mean,
congratulations on that. That's a real crowning achievement. Yeah. But my entire point is like they're so overhyped because they have looked so beatable the last couple of weeks, and especially now because look. I think ultimately, I'm not taking anything away from the Bills. I'm not saying I kind of am saying they're overrated, but I'm not saying they're a bad team. I'm just saying I think this will be such a close matchup. It comes down to the most important thing in football, and it almost always comes down to this. Who wins the turnover battle? Mm-hmm. Which is really, really bad news for the Bills because Josh Allen turns over the ball surprisingly a lot. So he threw for 14 picks this year, which was tied for second in the league, and 8 fumbles, which is tied for second in the league as well. So he turned the ball over 22 times. He's very careless with the ball, and that is a big issue. And on top of that, it's different if it's like, okay, this other team is like, just, they're whatever. They're coming in. They had a good season. The Bengals have won 9 straight games. They are on a very hot streak. They are I won't say full of them. They're very confident. Let's go with that. And in that span, Joe Burrow has thrown for 18 touchdowns and 5 picks. And on top of that, we need to remember, not just Damar Hamlin I'm talking about here. Tre'Davious White has not been the same since he's come back from his ACL. He's not been terrible. I'm not saying he's been terrible, but he's not been the same borderline all-pro corner that he was before. So Tre'Davious White's still coming back from that injury. And the rest of the secondary, there are injuries all over that secondary, ignoring Hamlin. And then you bring in Hamlin, who obviously still isn't playing. That's a banged up secondary against playing one of the hottest offenses in the league. I ultimately think Cincinnati is going to win this 34-24. I really do.
Okay, interesting.
Also,
So
and so on top of that, my favorite bet, and thank you again for Bet Online for giving me an amazing odd that I legitimately placed money on. While I was doing research on this, I'm like, and 50 there. Cincinnati money line plus 210.
interesting. Okay. So I actually think this is going to be a lot closer game. I think Buffalo's going to
It's a
play it
10-point
tough.
game.
Cincinnati's going to play it tough. I already brought this up in the episode earlier this week. That's like Cincinnati's offensive line sort of worries me a little bit as far as just how
That's
they're
fair.
going to be
No,
able to keep protecting for Joe
that's
Burrow.
the Achilles. That's the definition of Achilles heel right there. Of
Exactly.
like this team is perfect everywhere. That one position group is like, ooh.
Yeah, so that's going to worry me a little bit. We talked about this over the last weekend. We were both wondering, why does Eli Apple still have a starting job in the
Oh
NFL?
God,
Because
I
that's
hate
going to
that
be
man.
worrisome for me too. Because I mean, if Buffalo could take advantage of his coverage, then I mean that's going to be able to allow Buffalo to sort of move the ball down the field and obviously score more touchdowns. So it's like that can sort of offset any potential Josh Allen turnovers then, because they're going to be able to score a lot here. But I think both defenses are going to play it tight. I think the offense is going to be a little bit limited at certain times. So I got a little bit of a lower score. I got the Bills winning this game though. I got them winning 24-21 over the Bengals.
Okay.
Tyler Bass is going to get the game-winning field goal as to why they're going to win that game. But just, yeah, I got it being a little bit closer. But honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Cincinnati does pull off the upset, because it's like you said, it's like if that offensive line, like all MacGyvered together, can sort of hold up against Buffalo, they can easily win this game. So, I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to be completely shocking if Cincinnati pulls off the upset, but I just like Buffalo to sort of keep things rolling along, get to the championship game on the AFC side to play against the Kansas City Chiefs, who I already predicted in the
I hope
previous
not.
call.
I feel like the Chiefs are going to kill them.
I'm saying getting to the championship game. I don't know about what's going to happen.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's why I hope it. That's why I hope it's not the Bills though, because early prediction. If it is Bills Chiefs, I'm taking the Chiefs by like at least 13.
Interesting. Okay.
How about that?
All right.
How about that for a hot take? Josh Allen's about to win it all, isn't he?
So before we get to the championship rounds, we still have one more game. And honestly, Tad, I mean, maybe this is a little biased, but maybe we save the best game for last.
Hey, I gave this one to you on purpose. Just go for it, buddy. I'm not even gonna do the like typical thing while you're talking. You just run with it.
The Dallas Cowboys, the number 5 seed, will be playing the San Francisco 49ers. My San Francisco 49ers, the number 2 seed. That's going to be happening at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time and 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. That is going to be on Fox. And current spread in this game, this is the lowest of the 4 games. Current spread in this game is 4 points in favor of San Francisco. So honestly, Tad, I like the Sunday slate of games better than the Saturday slate of games. I like Cincinnati, Buffalo,
100%.
and of course, Dallas, San Francisco is going to be fantastic. So, I mean, the weekend is going to end on a very high note when it comes to playoff football. Obviously, fingers crossed. We don't know how the games are going to turn out, but we'll see. But honestly, the Dallas Cowboys, I know a lot of people want to knock the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that they just look listless. They look like the shell of themselves. But Dallas still was clicking on all cylinders. So, I mean, it's like you could still look bad against a bad team and still come away with the victory. But Dallas was looking very, very sharp on both sides of the ball. And the biggest thing, Tad, that I was telling you is just that this is going to be the biggest test for Brock Purdy. Because we talked about this earlier this week, that's like the teams that he has played up until now, I'd probably say their defenses were like maybe average at best. Like, I mean, they had some good defenses, but nothing too spectacular. Dallas is a top 5 unit. Like, I mean, that's no question right there. And they looked really good against Tampa Bay. Like I said, once again, Tampa Bay did not play all that well against Monday Night Football, but still, they're going to give San Francisco a hard time. And very similar to what we talked about with the Cincinnati Bengals and making sure that they can protect Joe Burrow, if Dallas can get good pressure on Brock Purdy and knock him down a few times and just get a lot of pressure, they're going to have an advantage because, you know, the offensive line is pretty good for San Francisco, but yeah, Dallas has a pretty good pass rush. Obviously, Micah Parsons is in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. So I mean, there's a possibility that there could be some issues there with Brock Purdy having to scroll out, throw some balls away, maybe take some sacks, and that can eventually rattle him. But obviously, the flip side of that is that if the offensive line can protect Purdy and he sort of looks the same way that he's looked all these past few games, Niners have this one in the bag. Because, I mean, just honestly, both these defenses like sort of cancel each other out. Like, both defenses play really well. And it's really just very similar where it's like whoever can win that turnover battle, that can be a big difference maker in this game for sure, because that happened last year too. There's a couple key turnovers that led to San Francisco eventually being able to take the lead. There's a couple turnovers that didn't cost them, but Dallas was able to get themselves into opportunities to potentially capitalize on them. They didn't, unfortunately. So, I mean, it's going to be very similar to last year where it's like whoever can make a key turnover or two, that's going to swing this game. But yeah, very much if that offensive line holds up, protects Purdy, he looks the same as he has these last 11 games
especially
or whatever.
Last week.
Woo! Like, I mean, it's just insane how good he's been looking. So both rushing attacks are really good. We already talked about Tony Pollard in the fantasy segment. Ezekiel Elliott, every so often. Obviously, the Niners got Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, Deebo Samuel when he wants to run. Like, I mean, this is going to be a fun game to watch both on offense and defense. And it's really going to be who can win that turnover battle and who can protect their quarterback a little bit better. Because, yeah, if you get pressure on Dak Prescott, that's going to affect things too for him. He's going to be prone to throw some turnovers too. So, I mean, maybe it's a biased pick here, but I like San Francisco to win this game. I like them to protect Brock Purdy. I like him to continue his thing going on. I got a little bit lower scoring here. I got it San Francisco winning 20-13 over the Dallas Cowboys here. And I'll close it out with a prop bet here. Christian McCaffrey is going to have a field day against the Dallas Cowboys. They're going to open up some good lanes for him. So I got Christian McCaffrey 87 plus rushing yards at plus 127.
I don't hate that. It's a little risky, but what were the odds again?
Plus 127.
Oh, I like that. That's a good one. Like if it was minus 127, I wouldn't like that as much, but plus 127, I like that a lot, actually. And now I agree with you. And that's why I was laughing when you gave your score prediction, because mine was 20-14 49ers.
Nice.
So either you have them missing an extra point or making a field goal. So it's just one of those.
Brett Maher, I mean, I know
that's a good point. I didn't even think of that one.
I know they signed Tristan Vizcaino as sort of like an insurance plan. I don't know if he's going to be active.
I wasn't.
Because that's the big thing. I don't know whether he's going to be active in case Brett Maher misses something during the game that they're like.
He's going to be active.
So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch too. Like, how's Brett Maher's mentality in this game?
Yeah. No, that's the better bet. Is that guy going to be active or not? But no, I mean, and here's the funny thing is ultimately what it came down to, and just knowing Mike McCarthy, because he always blows in the playoffs by doing something really stupid. And here's the stupid thing going all the way back to our first segment, almost 45 minutes ago. I bet you anything they're going to lean way too heavily on Zeke. And for some reason, he's not going to put Pollard in there. And I can already see now, all the Cowboys fans, I'm going to California this weekend. I'm going to be able to hear them from California, all the way from Dallas, being like, why is Pollard not in? Because that just screams a Mike McCarthy thing to do. I bet you anything that is how you guys shut him down. Is because for some reason, he still thinks it's like Zeke Elliott from 2022, or, well, we're in 2020. Whatever, 2020. Like, it's gonna be, he thinks he's old Zeke for some reason. I bet you that's gonna be the Cowboys' downfall. If not this week, let's assume they pull off the upset. I cannot see the Cowboys making the Super Bowl. This take is probably going to age horribly, but I'm gonna stick with it.
No, I'm very much in the boat. If somehow the Cowboys are able to pull up the upset here and move on, I like Philadelphia to beat them too, or possibly the Giants with if they have this in a row going too. It's like, yeah. So yeah, Dallas is just like, I feel like they're prone to beat themselves, and that's sort of what's going to happen for sure. So, that was a long episode for us, buddy. But yeah, we got through a lot of great topics. We got through some fantasy stuff, of course. And of course, we gave our divisional round preview. And I mean, we'd love to hear from you on everything that we discussed just today's episode and previous episodes. And I mean, we talked about it before, but you see that ticker down below. You see our social media handles. You can find us on Twitter. My personal handle, Desai23. You got Tad's at Desai94. You got the show handle at the Desai Guys. And we're on Instagram as well at the Desai Guys as well. So make sure you hit us up. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think is going to happen in the divisional round, who's going to move up to the championship rounds in their respective conferences. What do you think about players that you're thinking about drafting or avoiding in 2023 fantasy drafts? We'd love to hear your thoughts there. But yeah, guys, I mean, we appreciate everybody who's tuning in. And hey, the best way you could tune in to make sure you're catching up on all of our episodes, subscribe or to your podcast, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. You listen right on the LEFB Network website. Just hit that subscribe button. Always be up to date on all the latest and greatest that's happening with us on the podcast, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have our own individual YouTube channel on individual YouTube playlist.
How about that for an announcement?
No, you're right. We do have our own individual YouTube channel now too, under the LAFB umbrella still, but now it's our own individual channel. So yeah, you can make sure to subscribe to that channel. So you'll always be up to date with all the latest videos that we're dropping, some YouTube shorts. We got a lot of great content that's coming in the off season. So make sure you subscribe there. Always be up to date with everything that's happening there. But I mean, guys, to everybody who's interacting with us, who's watching videos, listening to the podcast, anything and everything, guys, seriously, we can't thank you enough.
And like Amir said, yes, this was a long episode, but it is because we love talking sports and not just football.
Sure.
Amir and I are both very well versed in basketball. Amir is more well versed in baseball than I am. So if you want to talk baseball, hit Amir up at that handle below. If you want to talk basketball, hit either one of us up. If you want to talk,
I will say neither of us are well versed in hockey, though.
I feel like I'm more well versed in that than you. So
maybe, but it's like a scotch.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I'll try. It'll be a lot of it, Chell, like the video game talk.
There
like,
you
hey,
go.
I'm down to try. It'll be funny to see it. So hit us up there. We have some very exciting announcements. I know I've been teasing this for weeks and weeks to come, but we are
tease will pay off. It will pay off.
We are getting and guys, I promise you, it's a really, really cool reveal. So keep tuning in because we're not going to tell you which specific episode, but it is an episode coming up in the very near future before this month is up, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. That's
so
correct.
Before January is up, we will make the reveal. So be sure to keep tuning in. Any questions you have about fantasy football, playoff football, betting, draft stuff, we're here for you. We want to interact with you. If you just want to joke around, please. I've had some very hostile reactions. If you guys want a good laugh, go to my handle right below. Look at the recent interactions I've had with TCU fans. It's pretty funny. So I love to interact with people. So please just talk to us. It's going to be a great time. And thank you so much for listening, as Amir said. And as always, everyone, please stay safe.